Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the Daily Gardener. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's July 18th. Have you tried growing the herb chervil? Chervil tastes similar to tarragon. It's sometimes called gourmet parsley. It has a wonderful fern like leaf that turns red in the fall, which is another plus. August is a wonderful time to sow chervil, so keep that in mind as well. The 1884 Dictionary of English Names of Plants lists chervil as the shepherd's clock because the blossoms open at 5 in the morning and then close up around 8 in the evening. Here's today's brevities. It's the birthday of the English naturalist Gilbert White, who was born on this day in 1720. White kept a journal for almost 3 decades where he recorded observations of his garden. His records were eventually published, and people immediately recognized that White had a gift for observation and for describing with vivid clarity the goings on in the natural world. Here's a little of what he wrote in his journal on this day in 1781, his 61st birthday. Farmers complain that their wheat is blighted. In the garden at Dowlands stands a large Liriodendron tulipifera, or tulip tree, which was in flower. Mr. R's garden abounds in fruit and in all manner of good and forward kitchen crops. Some cucumber plants also grew up of themselves from the seeds of a rejected cucumber thrown aside last autumn. Mr. R's garden is at an average of fortnight before mine. And today is the anniversary of the death of the author and gardener Jane Austen. Austen loved gardens. She had a heart for ornamentals, herbs, and kitchen gardening. Her family always had a garden, growing their own food and beautifying their homes with flowers. In every one of her books, Austen included gardens. We know from her letters to her sister Cassandra that gardens brought her joy, and they were also regulating. In 1807, she wrote about the redesign of her garden. I could not do without syringia. We also talk of laburnum. The border under the terrace wall is clearing away to receive currants and gooseberry bushes, and a spot is found very proper for raspberries. And in 1814, she wrote about the garden outside her rented room. The garden is quite a love. I live in the room downstairs. It is particularly pleasant, opening to the garden. I go and refresh myself every now and then and come back to solitary coolness. And it was on this day in 1863 that the father of American landscape architecture, Frederick Law Olmsted, walked the battlefield of Gettysburg just 15 days after the battle. Olmsted was the General Secretary of the United States Sanitary Commission. He oversaw the support of sick and wounded soldiers in the United States Army during the Civil War. Olmsted was handpicked for the job thanks to his success in designing and overseeing New York City's Central Park, one of the country's largest public works projects. A week after the Battle of Gettysburg, Olmsted arranged for 40 tons of supplies to flow into Gettysburg every day, bringing in items like surgeon silk, fans, butter, shoes, and crutches. By July 18th, the scene had settled down enough that Olmsted could walk the fields of Gettysburg. In Martin's biography of Olmsted, he shared that Olmsted was struck by the scale of the place. Everything had happened across distances far greater than he had supposed. Ever attuned to the landscape, Olmsted also noted that the hills were gentle and rolling, so very out of kilter with the carnage that was everywhere still in evidence. Olmsted came across spent shells, twisted bayonets, broken down wagons, and half-buried dead horses. Particularly touching to Olmsted was the random strew of Union and Confederate caps, often together on the ground, shot through with bullet holes. In Unearthed Words, recently I've started collecting cuttings from my garden to make my own potpourris and sachets. Here's a quote from Eleanor Sinclair Road about this lovely garden pastime. No bought potpourri is so pleasant as that made from one's own garden, for the petals of the flowers one has gathered at home hold the sunshine and memories of summer and of past summers. Only the sunny days should be remembered. Today's book recommendation is A Southern Garden by Elizabeth Lawrence. As much as I love to garden, there are days when it's just too hot or humid to go out there. I draw the line when sweat starts to trickle into my eyeballs. Then it's time to call it a day. Brutally hot days are the perfect days to read a garden book inside, and Lawrence's Southern Garden is a classic. This is Lawrence's personal experience with gardening, my favorite kind of gardening book. Although Lawrence's growing zone isn't always applicable where you might be gardening, I guarantee you'll learn something. Her writing about gardens and gardening is conversational, thoughtful, and charming. And today's garden chore is to do a summer check of all your irrigation systems and repair anything that's broken. I so wish I would have done this last summer. By the time I discovered a leak, we had a huge water problem to address. In the garden, too much water can be just as harmful as too little. Throw in temperature extremes, and you have a perfect storm inviting fungal and other diseases, pests, and problems. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. On this day in 1908, Maxfield Parrish created a piece of art called The Botanist, and it appeared on the cover of Collier's magazine. The image shows a full-length profile of a man wearing a long botanical green coat. In his raised right hand, he is holding a plant, and in his left hand, he is clutching a magnifying glass, while a few open reference books are tucked under his arm, and a specimen case is slung over his back. The classic image was made into poster-sized prints in the 1970s. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener, and remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced weekdays in lovely Maple Grove, Minnesota. You can find complete show notes over at thedailygardener.org, and be sure to share the show with your garden friends. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest, and of course, Facebook. While you're over at Facebook, don't forget to join the Daily Gardener community. Just search for these 3 words, Daily Gardener Community. The group will pop right up and then request to join. Finally, I want to thank my team at Podfly Productions, where my fabulous editor is Eric Begay. Have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow.